understand the concept called as variables. Okay, so what exactly a variable is, that we are going to see now. So a variable is basically used to store a data, different type of data. Okay, so let's take an example. Okay, so for example, I have one student. Okay, so suppose I have one student, and this student has a roll number, say suppose 101, a name, say suppose Raj, and say suppose age 24. Okay, can I say that these are nothing but the values of this particular student? This is my roll number, this is my name, and this is nothing but age of this particular student. So if I want to create a program in which I want to store these values, then in order to create or in order to store these particular values, I want to use one concept called as variables. So what exactly a variable is and why it is used? So variables are basically used to store different types of values. That means you can store any type of value. You can store numbers, you can store names, you can store some point values, such as say suppose his aggregate 85.3. So you can store any type of values in a variable. So why variables are created? Variables are created because if you want to store any data, you want to create a variable. That's it. Okay, so now there is one more important point about this particular thing, is that variables are nothing but reserved memory location to store values. So one thing to notice here is that whenever you create a variable, right now you don't know how to create a variables, but we in a short time we are going to see how to create a variables. Okay, so variables are nothing but reserved memory location to store your values. What this exactly is? So in order to create a variable, so say suppose if I have a variable, I have one variable, say suppose name. Okay, so when you create a variable, the value of this particular variable, say suppose the value is Raj. Okay, so when you create this variable, certain amount of memory is allocated to this particular variable. So one thing to remember is that whenever you create a variable, you reserve some part of memory for this particular variable. Okay, and that some particular part, that means how much memory should assign to this particular variable, is depend on its data type. Okay, so right now we are not going to see data type. Okay, but one thing to remember here is that when you create a variable, you reserve some part of your memory for that particular variable. Okay, so when you create a variable, you reserve some space in memory. So based on the data type of a variable, the interpreter will allocate the memory. As I said, जो भी data type रहेगा, वो data type के हिसाब से हम लोग memory असाइन करते हैं. किसको असाइन करेंगे? वेरिएबल को असाइन करेंगे. ओके, सो लेट्स सी how to create a variable. Syntax for creating a variable is very simple. That's it. You just have to specify a variable name followed by the value of a variable. That's it. So when you create a variable, for example, if you want to store a name, then simply create one variable. Say suppose I'm creating a variable called as name, and just put equal to sign over here and assign some value to it, and that's it. This is how you can create a variable. Say suppose if you want to store an age, then just create a variable. Okay, age, then put some value in it, say suppose 24, and that's it. This is how you can create a variable. By the way, semicolon in Python is not that much mandatory, so you can avoid it. Okay, but it is a good habit to put a semicolon. Okay, so in this way you can create a variable. So every variable has a name. Okay, and you can create any type of variable. You can create this is known as integer type of variable. Why? Because this particular thing contains integer values. Okay, so this is how you can create a variable. Creating variable is very simple. You just have to put a variable name. You have to decide a variable name and just assign some value to that particular variable. That's it. Okay, so there are certain rules that you should know about defining a variable. That means whenever you are selecting a name for a particular variable, then there are certain rules that you should know. Very first thing is that a variable name can have a short name. That means say suppose if you want to store an age, then you can create a variable called as a and just write 24, or you can give more descriptive name like age is say suppose 25. So a variable name can be a short name like ab or xy something, or a variable name can have a more descriptive name such as age and something. Okay, so it is always better to use more descriptive name, because हम लोगों को पता लगता है कि कौन सी वैल्यू है ये. मतलब अगर मैंने बस इतना ही लिखा और मैं अज्यूम कर रहा हूँ कि 24 मेरा एज है, तो मैं ये ए को देख के आइडेंटिफाई नहीं कर पाऊंगा कि ए वेरिएबल किसके लिए मैंने बनाया. बट अगर मैंने इसको देखा तो मैं जल्दी से पता लगा सकता हूँ कि दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग इज माई एज. ओके, सो दिस इज नोन एज डिस्क्रिप्टिव नेम एंड दिस इज नोन एज शॉर्ट नेम. ओके, देयर इज वन मोर रूल here is that variable name must start with a letter and underscore character only. So a variable name can start with a letter. That means you can say that age. As you can see, this is allowed. Why? Because it is starting with a letter. Alphabet से start हो रहा है. Also it can start with underscore. A variable name can start with underscore such as underscore number something. Okay, is equal to 10. So this is just a variable name. A variable name can start with underscore. This is allowed. But other than this, if I'm writing something like this, star ampersand num is equal to 10. No, this is not allowed. Why? Because it is clearly mentioned that a variable name must start with letter or underscore. Other than this is not allowed. Okay, so if you are using something like this, percentage age is equal to 25, then again this is also not valid. It is not at all a valid variable name because it cannot start with dollar. Okay, now there is one more thing. It cannot start with a number also. That means you cannot write something like this, 8 num is equal to 100. No, your variable name cannot start with a digit, right? So this is your third rule. That means a variable name cannot start with a number. A variable can contain alphanumeric character. That means variable के अंदर numbers वगैरह रहेंगे तो चलेगा. That means कुछ ऐसे num1 करके मैंने एक variable create किया, num1 is equal to 100. This is allowed. This is right. But if I place this 1 at the start, then it is not allowed. अगर मैंने ऐसे कुछ लिखा, then it is not allowed. Why? Because variable name cannot start with a digit, which is nothing but your third rule. There is one more thing. Variable names are case sensitive. That means अगर मैंने कुछ ऐसा variable create किया है, okay, say suppose if I have created a variable called as age, and then while printing the output I am writing age like this. A क्या कर दिया मैंने? कैपिटल कर दिया. Then ये एज एंड ये एज सेम नहीं रहता. दिस इज माई टू डिफरेंट वेरिएबल. केस सेंसिटिविटी मीन्स व्हाट, कि आप लोग स्मॉल लेटर्स एंड कैपिटल लेटर्स को अलग अलग कंसिडर करता है. ठीक है, सो पाइथन इज अ केस सेंसिटिव लैंग्वेज जिसमें ये एज, ऐसा एज और ये एज, ये तीन डिफरेंट वेरिएबल्स है. ओके, नाउ देयर इज वन मोर थिंग. Variable name must not contain a white space. That means if you are creating a variable name such as something like this, for example, first, and then you are putting some space and writing num is equal to 10, then this is not allowed. This type of variable name is not allowed. Why? Because there is a white space over here. White space is nothing but your blank space. So if you are writing a variable name with white spaces or blank spaces, then those type of variables are invalid. Okay, so like there is also one important rule that you cannot use keyword as a variable name. Now what do you mean by keyword? Keyword is nothing but a reserved word. So python ने खुद के लिए कुछ words create करके रखे हैं जिसका meaning already defined है. Okay, so a reserved word is also known as keyword. Okay, for example, there are certain keywords such as if. Okay, if there is one more keyword called as break. There are various keywords, okay, for. So you cannot use those keywords as a variable name. That means you cannot write for is equal to 101. No, you cannot write this. Why? Because for is a keyword. Okay, so there are various keywords like if, for, break, while, continue. ओके, सो ऐसे बहुत सारे कीवर्ड्स हैं जिसको हम लोग एज अ वेरिएबल नेम यूज नहीं कर सकते. सो लेट्स क्विकली सी सम वैलिड एंड इनवैलिड वेरिएबल नेम्स. सो ऑल दोज थिंग्स आर वैलिड. Okay, this is valid because a variable name can start with the alphabet. This is also possible because underscore आ सकता है बीच में. This is also right because starting हम लोग underscore से कर सकते हैं. This is also right because a particular variable can contain alphanumeric thing. Okay, and these are the example of invalid variable name. This is not allowed. Why? Because variable name cannot start with a digit. This is also not allowed because you cannot put a white space over here. Variable cannot be created with white spaces. And again, this is also not allowed. Why? This is also not allowed. Why? Because your if is what? If is a keyword, so you cannot use keyword as a variable name. So this is not allowed. Why? Because if is what? If is a keyword. Okay, so these are nothing but the examples of some valid and invalid variables.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe our channel and share with your friends.